This podcast is brought to you by Primary Arms. Primary Arms seeks to provide the best shopping experience for everything firearms. With over 13,000 products from over 400 top brands, Primary Arms carries a complete selection of rifles, handguns, firearms parts, shooting gear, apparel, and more. Every order comes with a commitment to superior service, backed by fast shipping and an expert support team. Primary Arms, serving freedom since 2008. Find out more at frn.deals/PA. Welcome to the AR-15 podcast. This show is for you if you just bought your first rifle or if you've been building them for years. There is something we can all do to take our black rifles to the next level. My name is Nick Dooley, and I am joined, as always, by my co-hosts, Garth Over.
How we doing?
And Tyler Brockle.
Hey, everybody.
How are we doing today, guys?
Not too bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. It's been another minute since I've got to join you, so I'm happy to be here again.
Yeah.
Yep. Unfortunately, I think we all had scheduling conflicts pop up last week with a variety of different things between just work, government, and weather.
Yeah.
All hitting at once.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the trifecta.
I can't complain, though. I was shooting, and I was getting paid to shoot, so I was super happy about it.
Yes, that is good. So, what have you guys been up to here in the past week or so?
Well, actually, today I just was down to one of the local gun shops in Pier there, and picked up a couple more of the Atlas targets. So I'm gonna put those on my pistol range. So I'm pretty excited about that stuff. I'm gonna drop them out there like 25, 30, 40 yards, somewhere in there, and have a couple long shots with the pistol. So pretty stoked about that. Been really into the pistol shooting lately, so really excited.
Right on. Yeah, I was at the MAC 5, the Marksmanship Advisory Council competition last week for the Army. First time I'd been there. That was awesome. We actually got to go out to, I think 10 different individual stages or competitions, out to 600 yards. We actually had like a 8-mile-an-hour crosswind that day, so we were doing a lot of holdovers and really got to push that ACOG to and actually like utilize the reticle. It was a blast, and I got back and I ended up changing up one of my guns quite a bit. I got a piston barrel on my LMT, and then I ended up moving a Elcan Spectre over onto it because I can apparently use those when I go to the Winston competition next spring. So I got a 3-gun competition coming up on Saturday. So tomorrow I'm going to get that Elcan zeroed and try and get some rounds on it before we go to the 3-gun this weekend.
Yeah, what's that all about? I saw that was posted in the Facebook group.
Yeah, it's just a head-to-head thing. So basically, 2 people are going to go head-to-head, and they're just going to do it bracket style.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's double elimination. So I've never done anything like that, outside of like sports. So this will be pretty interesting. So you beat the one person, you move on to the next, and then even if you lose, you got to lose twice in a row to be booted. So
and that is 3-gun, or is that single gun competition?
Well, I mean it's normally it's all 3, not necessarily on every stages. Sometimes it's a 2-gun, sometimes it's a 3-gun stage. It's random, and
it's what the kids call a multi-gun.
Okay. Well, I thought about coming over there, but I got my brother's wedding coming up this weekend, and it'd have been really hard to.
What's more important?
Oh, I could say it, but I will refrain.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Yes. I continue to have done nothing.
Man, you're on a roll.
You are. Longest streak ever.
Yes, the only thing I did get signed up for a carbine class to take here towards the end of the year.
Oh, that's right.
and I know we got signed up for that, and
What was the trainer again, or what was the company?
it's from Tactic MT, so Tactic Montana.
Okay, right on.
Up in Bozeman, right?
Yep, Bozeman, Montana.
Never been.
I've been to Bozeman before, but I've even been there in December and January, but I've never been there and shot in the winter.
It's gonna be a fun time.
Yeah.
So I got signed up for that. Then just a couple other, like nothing else really of note. Didn't even really order anything. More just waiting to get back in the swing of things again.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we doing training on 5.56 guns, but they're not in the AR platform. So
Yeah.
yes, the venerable saw.
Oh yeah.
But so other than that, we were talking. Tyler and I were talking a couple days ago, and I know that this is something that Garth and I have talked about a lot before as well. And with talking about classes, and Tyler even mentioned he was going to go zero something, but we haven't talked about, we've talked a lot about gear, we've talked a little bit about training, and this is one where I'm not going to say we're going to get crazy and use words like theory. I mean, I might, but let's talk about zeros.
Yes.
And zeroing, because, well, yes, it is cool, and we all like doing competition, and well, different competitions are different things. Like 3-gun super fast. Some of the things, like there's one course that Tyler just got to shoot with a rifle. It's called the EIC, for Excellence in Combat, and you would think that would be a very fast-paced match, but it is not.
Hoplite was that one killed me. Running 800 yards and then running 100 yards between each one. My glasses were. It was 96 degrees in Nebraska, and by the end of it, I had to take my glasses down because they were wet.
Yeah, you guys call it hoplite, and we call it the rundown.
Oh, okay.
But zeroing. So a little bit of terminology here. When you talk about zeroing, a rifle or firearm or anything like that, it's, oh yeah, let me go check and make sure, check the zero, get this zeroed in, and you talk about that. What that actually means is you are putting whatever optic you have, or optic, iron sights, whatever aiming device you may be using on your rifle, and you go out and you, in a very controlled environment at a set distance, you set up and you shoot, and you either, well, hopefully you are shooting something that you can make adjustments to see where, so that the bullet impact is where you put your sights, so it is desired.
Mm-hmm.
And after you do that, there are a couple different ways of doing that, because there's grouping and there's zeroing, and they are two different things.
Oh, 100%.
I have to, and I want to point out one thing too, because like growing up on the farm, right? Like when I was really young, I understood zeroing is your bullet hits a certain point at a certain distance. And so the old redneck adage that I grew up on was, well, 0 to kind of the distance that, you normally shoot deer at. And so early on, that's what I did. And it wasn't until I was later in my teens that, I learned that the sight of your weapon and the barrel are not parallel to each other. And I know like a lot of new troops that come in don't quite understand that concept as well until you kind of draw it out. But basically, when you look through your optic, you're looking at a straight line. Now, the barrel of your weapon is angled up compared to line of sight. And what that means is basically your bullet is not coming straight out of your barrel.
Well, it's not that it's not straight. Like the bore, they do run more in a parallel line if you would put like a laser coming out. That's why you can use laser aiming devices that go out that goes to infinity. But what it is that what you're more trying to convey is the parabolic arc of the bullet is more so than the rifle barrel being at an angle. It's when you fire, the bullet is still rising to a certain point.
Yes. And so I guess the point I was trying to make there is you are going to your parabolic arc is going to cross with your line of sight at 2 points, once on the way up and once on the way down. And I didn't learn that until later on in my teens. And that's something I wish I would have known right away. So when we talk about zeroing, I know the common ones are like 25, 50, 100. I know, Dooley, you even have a weird one at 265, which I definitely want to discuss. But yeah, so just know that you keep that in mind when we discuss different points of impact versus zero, that the bullet is going to cross your line of sight at 2 points.
Yep. And I'm also going to do one other caveat for when people are watching this before we get angry comments on YouTube, which will happen, and then like angry emails from people who say things like, well, actually, it's when you say 50, 250, it's 50 and 247 meters. Not, it's we're not going to be dealing in 100% absolutes.
Yes,
and
I'm sure you can't shoot that accurate anyway. So settle the F down.
So, but well, yes, I do understand that there is some give and take with that. When we like, you were talking about growing up, and again, I grew up, hunting and all of that. And the big thing that I always heard was, well, we'll get it on paper at 50, and then we'll get it dialed in at 100, and then it didn't seem to matter what cartridge anyone used. They always wanted it an inch high at 100 so that they could be good to 200 or, whatever it was, because they had this mythical inch high at 100 that worked for every common deer caliber.
Yep.
Yeah, I never got that. I didn't get about the whole bullet drop until about 7 years ago when you told me, Dooley. Before that, I was like, you said it at 100, it's going to travel from your barrel to the 100-degree or 100-yard mark, and that's it. Like the whole concept of zeroing a rifle to me was pretty childish. So,
well, and back then, it was just a simple crosshair, vertical and horizontal line. That's
exactly.
It. No tick marks, no nothing, and you were just kind of eyeballing. Okay, the width of a deer is basically 10 to 12 inches. I know that I'm going to be 3 inches high at this point. So if I aim 3 inches low, I'm going to hit it right on. You know what I mean? So you kind of use the deer body as your point of reference. But now we got a lot of pretty good. Most hunting reticles now have etched sights with various tick marks to help you out.
Yep.
That kind of comes back to one of my where I've said oh, it's a minute of coyote or minute of barn accurate.
Yep.
Well, here's a question, and I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself on this, but when you guys would actually zero rifles, did you actually just go out and shoot paper, or were you one of the guys that set up in your basement first and you had that magnetic, sight spot glass or whatever you'd stick on the end of your barrel and get on that before you'd go shoot paper, or were you just like, screw it, I'll take 50 rounds out to the farm and shoot?
It depended upon what I was zeroing, and the reason why I say that is it's like I even had the laser bore sighter at one point, and growing up with bolt guns, you went out to try it every year, but it was pretty much just the exact spot it was last year, the last time you shot it, because you stuck it back in the gun cabinet. And but beyond that, when I started doing stuff where I'd move optics around or something like that, I would on a bolt gun, it's really easy because you just pull the bolt out and find something roughly the right distance away, and then you'd look down the barrel, and find the point, and then look through the scope and find the point. And I have done that before, even with ARs, where I've pulled the bolt carrier out and looked down the barrel at the range and looked at the target, and then yep, and then dialed things as appropriate.
Yep.
But that was more for, I don't even know where we're hitting. Like, no impact, no idea.
Yeah.
The best process I found, because I used to, I had some of the I can't remember the brand name, but you put the round in the chamber that has a laser in it.
Yep.
And basically I do a quick little bore sight at like 15 yards in my basement, and I'd use like the Hornady calculator on my phone to kind of, okay, if I'm aiming here, I'm only at 15 yards, I should be impacting this distance. And then I would do a 25-yard zero, just because I didn't really trust that laser. And to be honest with you, I was not impressed, and maybe I was just buying really cheap ones. I was buying like the $30 ones, but they always seem to be fairly off. So I always
Aren't those
zero.
like the Crimson Trace things or something
Yeah,
like that?
yeah. That's
Yeah.
what. Yeah.
Or was it Laser Max?
Could have been that too.
I don't know. It was on an Amazon special, so that was probably where I went wrong. But the point was to get it in the vicinity, and to be honest with you, now for the most part, if I put something on a Picatinny rail, it's fairly, and I pull it off and move it around, it's been fairly repeatable. If I put it on a different one, and I can go out and zero at 50 yards and be a few inches off and just dial it in for that gun. So if it's a brand new one that I know that I have no idea, I'll start at 25, just because then I can ensure that it's actually going to be on the piece of paper, and then I'll move it back after that, and depending on what it is, whether it's 50 or whether it's 100. But I'll always start out at 25.
Yep.
Nice.
So when it comes to zeroing, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of different theories behind how to zero a rifle and optic combination.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I have one optic. It's the very first focal plane optic I ever owned. It was by a company called Shepherd, and it's a very much so a hunting optic. It's a Shepherd scope, and they were designed purely with hunting in mind, but they had a one-shot zero. Because yep. Well, so the whole thing behind it was you'd put it in a bag, like you'd put it in sandbags and get it all done up and aim it at your target, and then you'd pull the trigger, and then you would look back through the scope, and then you would take off, because it had two sets of turrets.
Okay.
And you would take the one set and you would drag it up to wherever your bullet impacted. And then you would use the big set and put it back in the center.
Okay. Interesting.
And it was a method. I'm not going to say it was the method.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really neat setup, and it does hold accuracy. There's nothing wrong with the scope at all. It was just one of those, like, kind of a hokey thing of how to zero. But when I mentioned earlier just a little bit about grouping and zeroing, and you kind of have to talk about both of them together, because you can shoot and have like one round that just kind of flies off, and that's the shooter. Because, like, I know I can tell when I've pulled a shot, or, okay, well, I'm going to put 3 rounds just to make sure this is where it is. I really prefer 5, like a 5-shot group, just to make sure. And then you would take the center of that group and move it over. That's where you would make your adjustments from, to have the center of that group be where your zero is.
Yeah.
And now, granted, I have just been doing a lot of like Army teaching on how to zero, so that is very prevalent in my mind, of explaining to people, don't move it on your first shot. It might be you.
Yeah, probably is you.
Yeah, probably is you.
Basically, grouping is the overall area that the bullets are in relative to each other, and you want to make sure that they're actually, if they are very close to each other, then that's a good group. And you now know that you can actually move your sights to get a 0, whereas zeroing is the relationship of the group of rounds to the center of the target where you're actually aiming.
But I mean, that also qualifies
point of aim
for,
versus point of impact.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, it also qualifies what ammo you're using too. If you're using junk ammo and you've already zeroed the gun, which I've done before. I've used great ammo to zero a gun, and then I'll take it out and I'll shoot another group with it, and I will have 3 to the left, 2 to the right of the bullseye.
Yep.
You know, or I'll have 1 directly in the middle of the bullseye, and then the rest of them are hanging high left. I'm like, well, damn it.
Yep.
Yeah, I've had before where I've grabbed like what has been affectionately called like a Skittles mag, where it's all of the different ammo that I have.
Yep.
And just, all right, well, I've got like 3 rounds of this, 2 rounds of this, and you load it up into one, and then you go out and try it. All right, let's see where this is at. All right, that one's good. Whew, that one's way high right. That one's low left, and it's the different velocities and how they interact. And
Yep.
especially like across manufacturers, like, you know, Wolf and things like that, where
I actually have 6 magazines of your Skittles ammunition loaded up right now. Not yours, but mine, that I'm going to use for competition. So I can't wait to see my A zone, C zone, D zone hits. It's going to be awful.
Yeah, well, the good thing about using them for competition is if you're doing a run and gun 3-gun.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Generally, they're close enough where it doesn't matter.
Yep.
But when we get into this, like we already talked a little bit about the parabolic arc of a bullet and how when you fire a round, it is still traveling up because it is still technically speeding up. Like you have it hits the friction and then it's going through. It's not really speeding up anymore unless you have freeboard boost out of a suppressor, which I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But as the bullet takes off, it's kind of like an airplane. Okay, it goes from 0 to, screaming fast, say 3,300 feet per second or something close to that, a little over 3,000 feet per second for most 223 5.56 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes out of the barrel, and at muzzle distance, it is going to be muzzle impact, which is when you get into some of the long range stuff and ballistics calculators and all of those things, they'll always want to ask what your height over bore is for your optic.
Mm-hmm.
Because how high the center of your optic is over the center of your bore will create major differences in how you zero, because it does different things for reasons. Because if you're shooting like one of those crazy extreme long range where you're shooting 4 miles and you have a periscope on the end of your scope so that it doesn't get blocked by the rifle, that's a different thing than, oh yeah, I've got an 1.5-inch cantilever mount.
Right. Yep.
But that's one of those things where height overboard does make a difference, but we're not going to get into that crazy amount of stuff now. Like, we will talk about what I consider the most common. I know that there is another like 10 or 15 meter zero as well. I don't do that. I never have. I've always done either the 25 or the 50 meter zero.
Yep.
And that's a me thing. And I hate to say it this way because it's one of those, like, it's also an Army thing, and it works.
Yep.
Exactly. You don't do it because it's right. You do it because it works.
Yep. And the crazy thing to me is the individual weapons qual for the Army is done in meters, but the shooting competitions that I went to, they're in yards. So I don't understand why they don't standardize. Well, yeah, I guess I don't understand, because we were on an Army base, and the berms.
Was it an Army shoot or was it a civilian shoot, though?
It was an Army shoot on an Army base.
That is weird then.
And the berms were all at 100 yards each instead of meters. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, it didn't matter anyway. We're using ACOGs, and since they switched to the new round, the ACOG reticle that we have right now is made for the 855 on an M16, and we're using M4s with the M855A1. So you have a different round and a different gun, and well, that's not technically right anymore. So you're kind of, yeah, kind of eyeballing it the way it is.
You
So,
should write a strongly worded letter of
well, no,
disapproval.
I mean, I'm sure overseas they got the right
No, no, they don't.
no, they don't. No,
No, they don't. No,
most
I
people
can
don't know how to use it anyway. So
I can tell you with almost 100% certainty that when they started fielding the 855A1, which don't get me started on that round,
no,
because the reason we have it is an incredibly, like, the ballistics on that round are amazing, but the reason it's there is because of Europe,
okay,
because
body armor.
no, it has nothing to do with body armor.
I thought it was meant to be a more penetrating round.
Yeah, that's what they said, but
Okay.
the real reason is because almost every range in Europe that the U.S. Army used, the EU came out and said that we would not be allowed to fire on them unless we had lead-free ammunition.
Okay.
And big armies said, and Japan said something kind of similar for like Okinawa, and all these other countries went, "Hey man, no lead," and big army went, "Shit." So they came out with this new round and went, "Hey, it does really good against body armor. We're gonna say that's why we did this."
Okay.
But
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, back to zeros.
Yeah. I think anyway, meat and potatoes basically, and Dooley, I can show, if you want to give me control here real quick, I can show that Excel spreadsheet that I had. So just to kind of give everybody a bit of an idea, and this is going to be a very specific example with a very specific ammunition with a very specific optic.
I think you should be able to pull it up.
Okay, sounds good. So basically, we'll be talking. I mean, AR-15 podcast, we'll probably talk about the 5.56 223 as our main focus. I think that's kind of what everybody's using and expecting. But just to give you an example here, I'll share my screen so we can talk about this.
While you're doing that, I'll talk a little bit about, because we talked about why the Army, like the most common one that I said, and why the way the Army does it. And it is that so at 25 meters and at 300 meters, the round goes through the same plane, would be the easiest way to put it. And what that means is it is at the same point on the up and down, or so close that it doesn't matter.
Right. Yep. So for those of you who can see this, and we're just going to use it as a point of reference to talk. Basically, I'm using PMC X-Tac 5.56 ammunition. I'm using a LMT 12.5-inch barrel with a Elcan Spectre. And what I have here is the comparison in clicks. So I use the Straylock Pro app, put all this data in, and basically you can have it export the relative point of impact up or down from your zero in inches. And in this case, I have clicks, which is the number of clicks that I have to make on my optic in order to match my point of impact to my point of aim. And so I have 25, 50, 100, and Dooley's 265 suggestion up here. And you can kind of just gauge, you can kind of pick which zero works the best for you based on kind of where you're shooting at. So for instance, like I zeroed at 25 yards, and Dooley, you can hop in here at any time while we're talking about this. I have to adjust. If I zero at 25, I have a 10-click adjustment at 50 yards, a 13-click adjustment at 100 yards, 12 at 200, and then 9 at 3, 5 at 4, and it basically is zeroed at 25 and 500. and then I have to come up 5 at 600. So basically, there's a 18 click swing from the highest to lowest.
So one other thing that would be important to go through when he goes through these numbers that he's talking about is this is very specific to that one optic.
Yes.
So don't
Yep.
use this across the board for everything. And I believe that is a half MOA adjustment.
That is correct. And if you wanted to, I also have inches highlighted there on orange on the left side.
Yep.
So you can see
So-
basically if you want in terms
Yep.
of inches at 600 yards, it's a 45-inch
Drop.
drop.
Yep. So the reason why I thought it was very important to mention with that, when you hear the numbers and it's like the round of 18 going up, or, oh, I've got to go up, 12 or 13 clicks at 100. Now, it is very important to remember that, the 25 meter zero versus the 50-yard zero, where, like, you've heard me say things like mechanical offset, and that's where shooting at 25 and in, that comes to be very important. But also remember that this is also all in MOA, or minute of angle.
Yep.
And the important thing to remember when you're talking about anything in MOA is it is a graduated system of measurement, meaning that one MOA, minute of angle at 25 meters is 1/4 inch. It is 1 inch at 100, 2 inches at 200, 3 inches at 300, et cetera, et cetera. And no, that's not precise. Like, I think it's 97.5 meters is where it's, the 1 inch, but I digress.
Yep.
It's close enough for the work we're going through here to talk about that. So,
Right.
but the difference of this, that my one complaint about how Strylock does their, I don't like the down and up as it's noted,
Right.
just
Yep.
because it goes, you have to base for it to go down, and you'd be adjusting everything for it up and down. Needless to say, if you're looking at this, so if you go through and look at this with like the 25 meter zero and running everything through, it's generally about a 2-inch rise at 200, like 2 to 4 inches, I think, is what it's the rise is, and then it starts going down, and that's where your drop happens.
Yep. I think the biggest thing here is, clicks and inches aside, all I'm looking at is the numbers relative to each other in the specific distances that I'm shooting. So basically what I'm trying to get at is, if you look at the 25-yard zero, right? If I'm shooting targets between 50 and 300, because that's primarily where I'm going to be at, I'm making a 6.5 MOA adjustment, right? Whereas I look at the 50-yard zero, which is the one I personally do with my ARs, I'm making a between 50 and 300 yards. There is a 1.5 MOA difference, right? So,
Yep.
there is I don't even have to adjust the scope at that point for 1.5 MOA. I mean, I can pretty much eyeball that and put that in a 6-inch circle, essentially.
That's why I wasn't really sure. I think the math might have been wrong on your 25 meter zero, that the app did, just because that is a extreme difference, and I've never seen it be that much, especially since I know I know how much the drop and fall is, because no matter what, your drop is going to be the same for the bullet coming out.
Yep.
And I think the math might have been wrong on the part of the app for the 25 meter.
All right, I'll double check that real quick, but yeah.
Just because I know that like, having shot a 25 meter zero a lot, I do not have a 6-inch difference at 200. And like, that's one where I know that the bullet rise is, much like it says here, 2 inches of rise. It's not a 6-inch rise between that different zero.
All right, I will check it. But
now, like when you're doing a 6.5 Creedmoor or something like that with a 15 meter zero, then yeah, it's got a delta of like 18 inches.
mm-hmm.
But and delta is the top of a parabolic arc. So sorry.
No, I just double checked it, and these are the numbers that it's spitting out on me for the vertical correction and clicks.
Yep,
But,
and that's just one where I go I should check it against.
You question the math, is what you're saying.
Yep, on that one, I have another app I should run that through.
Yep, fair enough.
Just because. Oh, look at that! I already have it loaded up.
Yeah. Well, either way, we're looking.
Yep.
We'll dump the 25 for now. Like I said, I recommend a 50. The 100, you know, at a 100-yard zero, you're looking at 1.5 MOA change at 50. 75, 100, 200's basically a half MOA difference, and then 300 is a 2 MOA difference. So it's not that drastic of a change. And as long as you know your holdovers, I mean, 50 or 100 would technically work for you. But one of the interesting things when I took that carbine course from Haley Strategic, they did a PowerPoint on the first morning, basically kind of showing what their theory was on what distance you actually should zero at. And it was kind of nice because they had a human silhouette and basically showed, I think they used 855 as an example, where your expected points of impact are if you just aim at the center of the individual and you aim at the same point each time. They put little marks on the target to show where the bullets are going to impact. And so their justification was, if you're just, not even making adjustments and you're just shooting center of mass, 50-yard zero, I think, would always put a bullet in the torso between 25 to 400 yards without having to move the reticle, or move the weapon. So that's where I got sold on the 50.
I zero all mine at 50 as well. And it's one of those where, like I said, I've always called it the 50-250.
Yep.
And, at 50 meters and at 250 meters, the bullet passes through that same arc. And the Army does a 25 meter zero. I do PCCs at 25 meters.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're pistol caliber carbines and I'm not planning on taking them out past that. Or, like 300 meters is not what I'm planning on doing with one. And like pulling up all the math in front makes for really interesting viewing and good things to look at. And you've done a really good job explaining the spreadsheet. But unfortunately, it's hard to see without the visualization, and words are hard right now.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. I do shoot the 50 more than anything. It's kind of one of those sweet spots for what you're doing. And we like what Tyler was talking about, going through the Haley class, where talking about center of mass on people. This would be a combat zero, like if you were planning on using it for something like that, or competition where you're going to be shooting at that IPSEC or USPSA silhouette style.
Bullet in a body kind of mentality. We're not necessarily talking extreme precision, like if you're with PRS or whatever.
Minute of bad guy.
Yes, minute of bad guy.
We're not shooting minute of barn anymore.
Well, we'll get there later.
Okay.
But that's where that's where everything expands out, and we get back to minute of barn, because like when you go through and get into extreme long range, they end up shooting at like an 8x8 target, which really is minute of barn.
Yeah.
So before we get too far off it, you want to talk this 265 yard or 264 yard zero that you were telling me about earlier this week?
Sure. I'll talk about the 265 meter zero, or 264. 264 is 265
yards. You keep going back and forth. You mean 265 yards, right? Or are you doing that one in meters?
Yes. And
Not confusing at all. I'll just let you talk. Go.
but it's again, I equate everything to meters when I shoot Army stuff, and it's I know that a lot of times they will say like, "Oh, get up on the 100-yard line," and that's because like when I've shot the Mac, I've actually carried a rangefinder with me, and they still shot in meters, but the old guy on the line called it yards.
Yeah.
So it's the back and forth of which one is which.
Sure.
So it's get up here on the 25-yard line. Well, it's 25 meters. That doesn't matter. It's the same thing.
Not when you start getting out there. It's not.
I'm well aware. But this 265 meter zero or 264, because like 264 is easy for my brain to remember instead of 265. Don't ask me why. But when you do a zero at that distance, it has a very unique ability, specifically with like the 855A1. It is almost no drop till 500.
Yep.
And from ostensibly point of impact, or well, I mean, obviously at close range, you have the mechanical offset difference.
Yep.
And stuff like that. But from 50 meters to 400 meters, there is almost no difference in where you would aim.
Yep. 2.5 MOA at the max. So I get it with those EIC targets. I think the center X is what, 4 inches in diameter.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, theoretically, inaccuracy of the gun aside, if you were an absolute perfect shooter, you could aim at the center of the target and be no more than 2.5 MOA off all the way out to 400 yards. So I get the appeal of it. It's a pretty interesting concept. I just never would have thought of it because, most cases when we go on to a military range, those are done at 25 meters, and you're actually, some people are pretty hard pressed to find a range that'll go out to 300.
Yes. And that's not just military. That's a lot of people in general have a hard time finding places that'll let them do it. And especially getting at this like really weird, like kind of nonsensical range that, it sounds like I just pulled completely out of my ass. But this is
when you said 264, I'm like, that's really specific. I mean, at least have a 5 or a 0 digit at the end, because then I'm like, what's behind that? He goes, I don't know, it's just what I remember.
Yes, if you can believe that, Garth, it's just how my brain squirreled something away.
No, I totally get it. With you, yeah, it's fine.
But either way, I mean, at the end of the day, I think a 50-yard zero, and you can't go wrong with a 25 or 100 as long as you understand your holdovers. And all three of those, 25, 50, and 100, will probably work for the majority of ranges that you can go to, unless you're doing an indoor range. But yeah, at the end of the day, I recommend the 50. And then if you haven't done so already, because obviously we've been saying a few numbers here, these numbers are very specific to this type of ammo, right? And this gun. So I know I used the Hornady app. That one was pretty good. I purchased the Straylock Pro app. That one was pretty good. And Dooley, I don't know if you have any other recommendations on far as
I do
apps or websites.
So I have the Straylock Pro as well, and the other one that I've had for forever, I'm not even sure. Like, well, it must still be available in the App Store, but iSnipe.
Okay.
And it was another one where you input it in. iSnipe is great because like Straylock Pro is what a lot of people use, and it's what like the pros and the PRS use and all of this stuff.
And the reason for that is just what I only learned about it 2 weeks ago, right? And my mind was blown. Yes, it's $12, which seems like quite a bit for an app, but it's super cool because it has a lot of the common paper targets already preloaded. It has a lot of the common optic reticles already preloaded. For instance, like I was
Yep.
using an ACOG. Bam, they had the exact ACOG that I was using. I switched over to this LCAN. They have the exact LCAN reticle.
So, fun fact, it even has all the Swamp Fox reticles.
No, very cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did go through that. I just was scrolling through because it'll show like where to aim at in your reticle with stray lock if you wanted to see all those things. Eye snipe is a more dumbed. I want to say a more dumbed down version. To me,
Simplified.
it is a more user friendly for how to enter things in,
Yep.
and that could also be because I've used it for way longer. So,
Yeah.
like it's the how it maps everything out to me is more digestible
Yep.
than the stray lock is. But I know that we just went on a giant rambling tirade, and
It's what we do.
Garth is probably the one person here who I know read the manual to zero.
Yeah, sure did.
Because didn't you read the manual for the blade, wasn't it? And like went through all of those.
You are giving me way too much credit. No, I did not.
Well,
I wish.
the
No.
manual doesn't really. I mean, it does tell you how to zero, right? But what you're talking about is
How the
reticle.
tree works.
Yeah, the reticle explanation.
Oh, that, yeah, absolutely. As far as that goes. And that's why, I mean, all this math is fantastic to learn and know. And if you're super into math and shooting, by all means, go for it. But I'm a typical AR guy who wants to hit 300 yards, and I'm happy with 300 yards. So I prefer the 5,200 yard zero with the BDC drops that basically any scope comes with nowadays. So, I mean, not to say math isn't fun and all, but it's not.
that is fair, and we just went down a really super nerd rabbit hole. Which is
you guys nerded out, and you were having so much fun. I just sat back. It was fun to listen to.
Well, and I don't mean to nerd out, right? But like a lot of these optics companies, whether all the way from your more like your Vortex, Swamp Fox, all the way to Night Force, Trigicon, all of these companies have put a lot of thought into the reticles that they put into their scopes. I mean, even the holographics and the red dots have a lot of science and everything behind it. And so if you're spending the money and doing all the research to select the type of optic you're using, I highly recommend, because I mean, I was in the same boat a while back where I would buy these optics and I wouldn't fully understand how to utilize the trees or the windage or anything on them. And now I do. And oh my God, it's an absolute force multiplier, whether you're, doing stuff for the military, you're doing stuff in competition. I mean, that's why you and I bought that Swamp Fox blade, Garth, just
absolutely.
for the 3-gun stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Yep. I know that when you talk about utilizing that, the first one that I really remember a scope coming out with this, and it was, I always heard it referred to as, it was almost mythical. And it's a company that doesn't even make scopes anymore because it was Nikon.
Yeah, dude. Oh man.
And the Nikon BDC.
Yeah.
And everybody be like, yeah, it's got the mil dots. And it was not a mil dot. It was just a dot. And like I distinctly I know a guy who to this day will argue that whatever scope he put or whatever rifle he puts it on, oh no, you just put it on this and that's where it hits at 400 yards.
Yeah.
And like, try as I might, I cannot get him to understand the difference in ballistics.
Yep.
Well, until you take him out and show him.
Yep. I think my I don't know what I want to call it, my glass shattering or my defining moment. I remember early on, when I was just getting into 3-gun, I went out to this 3-gun match, and they had this. It was like a gong, but it was holding a clay pigeon, and it was really, really close. And I think I didn't dump an entire mag, but I shot an entire mag at this thing because I just could not hit it, and I could not figure out where to put my dot in order to hit it. And so this thing's only like 15 feet away, and I spent 30 rounds trying to hit the damn thing because I had my head so far up my ass. And so it was pretty embarrassing. So after the fact, I looked it up, and I learned quite a bit about shooting targets that are really close.
Yes.
Yes,
So,
mechanical offset is a
yes.
thing.
So and that's why I have that extreme appreciation for that Swamp Fox blade.
Oh, I can't begin to describe how amazing that Swamp Fox is, especially even on my PCC. Just the bullet drop on that. I have a 25-0 on that. And I mean, I can take it out to 150. I mean, you were at the farm one day shooting my Sig Dually. I mean, you know what it can do. It can handle.
Yep.
So.
Yep, and that's one where, like, we talk about these different zeros and the capabilities of going back and forth on this. I talked a lot about the 25-meter zero, and I said, nope, I do the 50-meter zero. And Garth, I think you were at the range with me once there in Pier when we were at the range, and I put an optic on, and okay, yep, and I got it dialed in at 50, and I grabbed it and walked over to the 300-meter range, just right out the gate with it.
Yep.
And a guy goes, well, what are you doing? I go, well, I'm going to make sure it's on at 300. He goes, you just shot it at 50. Yep. And then I hit a 8-inch steel plate at 300 meters and went, okay, yep, it works. And the guy just looked like I had done some sort of witchcraft. But that's where the knowing where your rounds are going is so important.
Yep.
And understanding the ballistics, which we really said this was going to be about zero, but it became way more about ballistics.
It did.
Well, they go hand in hand. You have to understand your ballistics in order to pick your zero. So we talked about, the 223. What about now, since we're talking about the Swamp Fox, what about like 9mm for PCC ARs?
Yeah, Garth, you're going to be the one to speak to on this because, like, I've made hits with a PCC at 300 meters with a dot and consistently, but that was more just,
dumb luck.
Well, no, I'm going to call it the swag method.
Okay.
The swag method, for those of you who don't know, is the scientific wild ass guess. And it just worked out for me because I went, well, shooting a 24-inch plate, I think this will have about this much drop, so I'm just going to aim here. And it hit, and I went, all right, that's all I needed to do.
Yep.
No, I again, even with the 25-yard zero on my 9mm, that's what I do because I know any competition I go to, I'm going to be good from 25. I'll be good from 5 yards all the way out to about 100, 125, kind of pushing it. I mean, and then after that, I'm with dualies. It's kind of a hit and miss.
The swag method.
Yeah, the swag method. I mean, it's cool to shoot that far with a 9mm. Not necessarily why I want that gun in the first place. I don't need to do that. So I guess I've never really tried. But again, that 25-yard zero, I know that I'm solid out to 100, and in the USPSA matches, 100 yards is pushing the absolute limits, really, most of the times of what you have to do.
I guess for red dots, I've always done a 25-yard on the PCCs, and then I think I don't have my chart up in front of me, but I think it was like a 3 or 4 inch difference at 100. But anyway, 25 to 100, where I'm normally engaging targets with a 9mm, that was ideal for me. But then I know, like the Swamp Fox blade, they want that one zeroed at 50. So the tip of the chevron is good for 50, 200. The bottom of the Stadia is 15.
Now you switched between 9mm and 223 again.
Yeah.
Oh, I am looking at the Swamp Fox blade optic right here. It's saying 5200 for the holds.
For 9?
I'm pretty sure that's just 223.
Because again, as we talked about earlier, the math and all the money that they put into these optics,
Yep.
they always make those reticles for like one thing.
Yep.
And that's what they advertise it as.
Well, I typed in 9mm. I don't have the manual right in front of me.
Now, I know that Primary Arms does a 2.5 power that is set up for 9mm, and they can take that out to 200 yards.
So, since this is, as we furiously Google and Control F to look this up, running through when you have the stradia is what's called the like the tree or whatever it is as it comes down. So you have the tip and all that. And Garth, you have all yours pretty well mathed out on your 16-inch guns.
Yeah,
and
for the most part.
Let's be realistic. If I'm shooting a PCC and I have to engage targets, even in a non-civilian matter,
yeah,
I should not be doing that beyond 150 yards with a 9mm, because at that point I would rather have something with a far pointier bullet.
Correct. If I'm going to get in a long-range battle, I'm not taking my 9mm MPX SIG to said battle.
Yeah.
Well, that's one where if I'm going to shoot long range with something that's 9mm, I'm probably going to want a 375 Shytech.
Fair.
Because like maybe even a 350 Legend, because 357 and 9mm are the same bullet diameter, and like, we can get into all the oddities and niceties of that.
But you know what, Julie? There is one thing I've been meaning to approach about this. Not only is the ballistics and optics a very important part of the gun, but you know what else helps control that gun? VZ grips.
Yes, because the unique grip angle and texture of a VZ grip make sure that it doesn't get slippery in mud, blood, sweat. The 17-degree grip angle and mild to wild serrations and grip texturing allow you to do so much more for control. You can get these for 1911s with different variations for palm swells, grips. If you have a safety, what your notch cuts are on the bottom, all of these things are found for pretty much anything that has grip panels on a pistol. You can even get them for your wheel guns. And of course, my beloved Berettas. And with that, use the code AR-15 for a 10% discount. And you can find all of our discounts in our show notes page.
Right on. And at vzgrips.com.
Yes, vzgrips.com. No, that was an excellent segue, Garth.
Well, I just figured. Did you find anything, Tyler, on that?
What's that? Sorry.
Did you find anything on the 9?
So I gotta check the manuals, but their Swamp Fox's website says 1 reticle, any caliber.
All right.
So. And it does. I do understand him saying that. So
I don't know if I really need to take a 200 yards. I'm not saying I wouldn't. I've done it before, but yeah.
Oh, so it does say that the 5200 battle zero is applicable only to 5.56 and 308. The rest of the holds will work with any barrel length because the range is so short and effective.
Yes. Okay. So the only thing that isn't true on that is the 200 yarder for the 9mm.
Yes.
But the rest of the holdovers are good. Yeah, and really that's why we bought that.
Oh no, that's exactly why I bought it, for those 5, 10, and 15 yard shots.
The short ones,
just
yeah.
Me going, all right, is that 10 yards? I hope so. Okay, here we go.
Yep.
Yep. No, that all makes total sense. And with running those things through. And the other way to do that, to get really good at understanding where all these holds are, is with training.
Ooh, yeah. And the best way to do that right now is with a smart target attachment system from Trigger Interactive. let your range interact with you the same way that the military pop-up ranges do for a fraction of the cost. Check out triggerinteractive.com for more information and use promo code AR-15 for a 10% discount on all packages.
Bam.
Bam.
See, that's like segues into segues. Like
I know,
we're doing
we're
really good.
it's almost like we've done this before.
I mean,
We'll get
someday this will be professional.
Maybe. Let's not
Let's not get ahead of ourselves too much.
Wait, you guys are getting paid for this?
Well, guys, before we close out for the week, because we've been on for about an hour, and I think a solid 30 minutes of that was more or less math.
Yeah. SMRT.
Yes, the reason why like snipers are scary is not because they're good shots. It's because they figured out how to weaponize math.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess in conclusion, what I'm gonna take away from this is we're kind of all in agreement with the 50-yard zero is kind of our favorite. It's not a do all end all. I'm sure there are other distances that work for other people, and really you can make any zero work as long as you understand your holds. But yeah, I think our recommendation is for those ARs out there to do the 50-yarder. And I highly recommend downloading a ballistics app, or at least going online and kind of digging into this stuff, because once you kind of put like inches in terms of where your bullet's going to impact versus where you're aiming, it really kind of starts to click for you, so you can understand where you need to be putting that reticle when you're firing, and it'll help you quite a bit, whether it's competition or just trying to beat your buddies at the range.
Yep.
Or even for putting game on the table.
That too. So
they can find that. Is there anywhere else that we need to talk about before we get done, Garth?
Well, I think we should probably talk about Patriot Patch, patriotpatch.co. Patriot Patch has a wide variety of patches. They have morale patches. They have pop culture patches. They have tins. They have mouse pads, or they actually are not mouse pads, cleaning pads, but mouse pads nonetheless. They have a wide variety of stuff, guys. Go check those guys out at Patriot Patch, patriotpatch.co.
Right on. And if you want to find us, check us out on Facebook, AR-15 Podcast, Instagram and YouTube at AR-15 Podcast 2.0. We just started doing review videos as well. I was kind of busy the last couple weeks, so I haven't got one out recently. I apologize. I am working on that this week as well. And if you have any questions, comments, just want to tell us to go F ourselves, whatever, you can contact us at AR-15 Podcast 2.0 at gmail.com. And as always, you can listen to us on the Firearms Radio Network at firearmsradio.net/podcast/AR-15 podcast.
Yep, that's right. And everyone, remember to send in some questions so we can do a listener feedback show or a listener question show. I know occasionally I will get a message from someone asking me something about the show or a question that they had from one of our topics. And everyone, please make sure to reach out. We're going to try and put together one of those in the near future. And we might have some other kind of neat stuff coming up. So make sure you start interacting more with social media and doing all of those things so big tech can't keep us down.
Yeah.
So anything else to add for this, you guys, before we hang it up for the week?
No, fellas, good talk. I liked it.
Yes. Educational. Go shoot.
Yes, and you folks out there, stay safe and stay armed.